I have memories of going to my aunt's house to play Bubsy 3D. We booted up the game, and even as a 5-year-old at the time, I thought something was off. The controls with the 3D were not as smooth as playing Mario 64 back at my house. Even a 5-year-old me recognized it was bad. That is telling how bad it was. When you're at that age, sometimes just playing a game is fun, but I knew that it was not great. And we still know it as one of the worst games ever. When Bubsy's original 4 titles got remastered, I was puzzled. Is Atari trying to capitalize on the nostalgia and curiosity of those that have heard of Bubsy's reputation? The developer Limited Run Games is entirely focused on making collections of retro titles like Tomba, Gex, and Shantae. Atari has went to another studio to continue Bubsy's series with a sequel no one could have expected. Bubsy 4D is being made by Fabraz, a studio that I do not have the most experience with. Demon Turf has been on my radar for years with its 2D sprites navigating in a 3D platformer. I got my feet wet, pun intended, on Beeb's journey with Demon Tides through its demo in the Steam Next Fest earlier this year. Bubsy 4D got onto my radar specifically because of a preview from YouTuber Antude. Other than what I talked about, I don't have any attachment to Bubsy and his games, so the story just kind of presented itself. I wasn't struggling with what happened, I just wasn't drawn to it. But what gets me excited for it is the number of movement options. For example, Bubsy can inflate himself into a massive hairball that rolls about to generate speeds that some Sonic games would be jealous of. It is what the developer is known for, expressive platforming. Fabraz goes into depth on what it means to have expressive platforming on the Demon Tides description. A platformer with a lot of combinatorial depth, allowing you to express yourself through the game's movement, meaning a gap can be crossed in a multitude of ways. Bubsy 4D is exactly like that. The demo gives you so much freedom in how to complete a level. Movement is buttery smooth, and if you make mistakes, there are ways to fix that mistake with good reactions. Even now during its demo, there are videos of speedrunners beating levels in a single minute. You have so many different abilities related to movements that you may forget you even have those options. To some, it may not have as much combat as you would like from a platformer. If you prefer fighting baddies or want a balance between it and movement, then you may want to pass on Bubsy 4D. But for me personally, it is exactly what I want from the genre. I come from Smash Melee, which the community loves specifically because of the options it provides to be expressive through the movement. Bubsy 4D is now on my radar for that. I could have played more of the demo, but I didn't want to overexpose myself to what it has to prevent spoilers. I just got the costume to make Bubsy look like he did in his first 3D catastrophe. That satisfied me enough to know that it will be a day one purchase.
Time to buy something these kids stole from me, I guess.
What had me hooked initially was the visuals for Hermit and Pig. It made for an appealing look in what the description said was a story-rich RPG. The second was in the title, and pig. I'm a big animal guy, so making a pet pig a major part of the story and gameplay a big hook. But the demo has a lot of things I did not expect. Hermit, living a literal life of seclusion, navigates around nature. When battling wildlife in turn-based combat, you don't just select your attacks and wait for your enemy to take their action. Hermit has a nature guide that tells him how to handle certain enemies. Are they flying, low to the ground, dangerous to touch? The guide tells you which one to use, but isn't just picking which one. You have to remember the button combination to press to execute the attack. And not only do you have to remember what buttons to press, you are on a time limit. The second thing that surprised me was how funny the demo was. Not only is the writing funny, but the scenarios the story gives are hilarious. With being a man of nature, Hermit goes about hunting for mushrooms to use to recover health, give himself buffs, and even chuck at enemies. He eventually finds a mushroom that is glowing blue. When he eats it, his walking slows to the point he stops and immediately goes to sleep. In his dreams, Hermit finds an ethereal version of himself that guides him through the dream world. At the end, when Hermit awakes, he is rewarded for his psychedelic trip with new abilities. I was later asking myself what the purpose of Pig being a part of that party was. To that point, his main use was to dig up mushrooms outside of combat. When another mushroom with a blue glow was seen by Hermit, he passed on it. He knew it provided a high that he did not want to repeat. So he starts walking away right past it, only for Pig to swallow it, which sends him on his own trip. He meets a human acting version of himself that he follows. When Pig awakes and Hermit asks if he is okay, he answers with the word yes, not an oink, the literal word yes. His high taught him how to speak, but he teaches himself support abilities in combat, making him the healer of the party. And the combat doesn't end there. I covered it when fighting woodland creatures, but what of other humans that are in the woods Hermit calls home? It makes for not picking your attacks, but choice in what to say in conversation. And if Hermit says something awkward, he cringes and takes a hit of damage. All in all, the game has me looking forward to more. The comedy has me laughing more than I expected. I expected it to be a traditional turn-based RPG like Earthbound, but the way combat for attacks works is so inventive and fun. And even with the comedy, I am invested in the story and where it could go. Humorous RPGs can be very hit or miss on their stories. It's why I have bounced off some and considered others some of my favorites of all time. I'm hoping Hermit and Pig hits with the latter. And finally, after having some difficulties with a few other demos, I got to trying out a game in my current obsessions of clicker games. I'll plan on doing a video that talks about why I got into the genre, but for this video series, I tried out This Ain't Even Poker, You Joker. Like other clickers, it is focused around the automation of clicking. Here it is all about making poker hands with multiple decks. And after gaining enough money, you can draw more cards. While I did enjoy the progression and feeling of the game, that isn't with some critiques. A detail I'll hit is the tech tree seems limited. Most of what it was focused on is payouts, the size of hand, and timing of how often the hands autoflip. Seeing those things, I'm unsure what the game will have to offer in its full release. The biggest thing I want is the ability to zoom out, and let me explain. When you start the game, you only have one deck you are making hands out of. But as you get money, you add more and more decks. The problem is that you can only see 3 on screen at one time. Part of the tech tree is how much you get paid off of for different poker hands. But I'd like to see how often they pay out to know which ones I should be investing in. When I'm watching poker in real life, you get excited when you see each of their hands. But here, you only see 3 on your screen when I had at times 5 or 6. That makes me personally feel a little off. I feel like MASH, the developer, could implement that instead of keeping the screen so zoomed in and flipping between decks stuck to scrolling. Yes, clicker games have stuff happen off screen automatically, but I feel like here players would enjoy and benefit from being able to see all their decks revealing instead of some being hidden.